Hey, welcome! Today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going on an archaeological dig, but not into the ground. We're digging into our own minds to find the ancient operating system that, believe it or not, is still running our lives today.
I mean, have you ever really stopped to ask yourself this? Why are we as a culture so completely obsessed with what's coming next? So anxious about progress? You might think the answer is somewhere in a self-help book, but the real key isn't in our world at all. It's in a world that existed thousands of years ago.
You see, the mental software that you and I are running right now was coded long before the major belief systems we're all familiar with. So to really understand ourselves, we have to go back. We have to trace how our earliest ancestors first tried to make sense of reality.
Okay, so our first stop on this journey is the Paleolithic Age, the world of the hunter-gatherer. And right here, at the very dawn of human consciousness, our worldview was forged from two incredibly powerful and kind of contradictory observations about the world.
Think about it. Early humans lived with this profound tension. They'd look up at the night sky and see this incredible cosmic order, the sun, the moon, the stars, all moving in perfect, predictable cycles. But then they'd look around at their own lives, and what did they see? Total chaos. Life was fragile, it was unpredictable, and it could be snatched away in an instant. This conflict, this tension, is the engine that created our first beliefs. So what do you do with a world like that? Well, you give it a personality. That constant, predictable sky, that became a divine father. And the earth, with all its caves and springs that seemed to come from nowhere, that was the sacred mother, a gateway to another world. On Earth, women were seen as literally miraculous. They could create life inside their own bodies. Men, on the other hand, were seen as pretty ordinary. Their main job was to act as shamans, to be the middlemen with the spirits of the animals they hunted.
And this worldview, it worked. It was stable for thousands and thousands of years, until one invention changed everything: farming. You know, the agricultural revolution wasn't just about food. It was a revolution in how we thought, and it created this brand new, really agonizing philosophical problem for us to solve.
As we slowly shifted from being nomadic hunter-gatherers to settling down and farming, our entire relationship with the planet changed. We went from following the food to making the food. And that little shift, well, it forced us into a really deep moral crisis.
For the very first time, people weren't just killing a wild animal they'd tracked. No, they were raising animals, tending to crops. They were nurturing life, and then they had to kill it to survive. That creates an incredible psychological burden. I mean, how do you justify your own existence when it depends on the death of something you've cared for?
The answer they came up with was, frankly, brilliant. It was a powerful new myth. They told themselves that the food they were eating, the grain, the lamb, it wasn't just a plant or an animal. It was a divine son, born from the Sky Father and the Earth Mother, who willingly sacrificed himself so that humanity could live. This story took the guilt away. And this story wasn't just a story. It became a real-life ritual. A young man from the village, they'd call him the Corn King, would literally live out this myth. In the spring, he was celebrated like a hero. In the summer, he reigned as a king. And then, in the autumn, right as the crops were being harvested, he was ritually sacrificed, acting out the death of the very god he represented. For thousands of years, this made the human worldview totally circular. Life wasn't a one-way street heading towards an end, it was an endless wheel. Birth, death, and then regeneration. It was secure, it was predictable, and it felt completely natural. But of course, that cycle couldn't last forever. As those first farming settlements grew into cities during the Bronze Age, power started to shift in a huge way, away from the Earth Mother and towards a new kind of male authority.
See, the new ruling class, the guys living in these new cities, they weren't tied to the soil anymore. For them, power didn't come from growing crops, it came from warfare, from conquest. The Corn King suddenly stopped being a sacrifice and became a permanent king. And all those old earth-based beliefs, they started getting dismissed as primitive, backward superstitions from the countryside.
And this whole power shift was basically cemented in place by huge waves of invasions. You had these nomadic warrior tribes who worshipped these powerful, aggressive male sky gods, and they just swept across the land, conquering the more peaceful, settled societies that were still worshipping the Earth Mother. And what's absolutely amazing is you can actually read a record of this historical conquest in mythology. Seriously, the Greek myths are filled with these stories of new male sky gods like Zeus and Apollo showing up and conquering or marrying or absorbing the power of the older local earth goddesses. It's history, just disguised as a myth.
So, all of this, the farming, the cities, the new gods, it was all setting the stage for the single biggest revolution in the history of human thought, a completely new way of understanding time itself, an idea that would shatter the ancient past and create the world that we all live in today.
This quote right here, this perfectly captures the old worldview. For almost all of human history, we believed in circle time. The future was just going to be a repetition of the past. There was no such thing as progress, just endless, repeating cycles.
And this contrast, this is everything. The old cyclical view was secure, sure, but there was no concept of progress. You're just stuck on a loop. But this new idea, linear time, was completely different. It said time has a beginning and it will have an end. Now, this is way more insecure because the future is a total unknown. But it's also the only way you get the idea of progress, the demand to move forward.
So where did this radical new idea of align time come from? Well, it came from one small, seemingly insignificant tribe in the Middle East, the ancient Jews. Their worldview, built on 5 distinct stages, was about to completely rewire human consciousness. Their blueprint for time was revolutionary. First, there's a distinct beginning, creation. Then, there's a past that's unchangeable. We call that history. Third, there's a present where new, unpredictable things can happen. Fourth, and this is the big one, there's a future that is totally unknown and unwritten. And fifth, there's a final, definitive end. This structure, this is the source code for our modern anxiety, for our obsession with the future, and for our very belief in progress.
So, where does all this leave us today? Well, the modern Western mind is basically the product of 2 powerful, ancient, and often really conflicting streams of thought that we've all inherited.
On the one hand, you've got this Greco-Roman legacy. That's the voice of reason, of debate, of mythology full of flawed, very human-like gods. It's the part of us that questions everything. But on the other hand, we have the Judeo-Christian legacy. That's the voice of absolute faith, of strict morality, of a single perfect God. It's the part of us that needs to believe.
And that right there is the core conflict of our modern consciousness. We have inherited both a fierce drive to use our own reason to question absolutely everything, and at the same time, a deep ancient need for the security that comes from absolute belief. We live in the push and pull between these 2 ancient codes every single day. So, I'll leave you with this to think about. When you plan your life, when you worry about what's next, which ancient code are you really running? Is it the endless, secure repetition of the circle, or is it the anxious, forward-driving pressure of the line? The answer might just reveal more about you and about our world than you think. Thanks for listening.